Guys, remember, I can only see Twitch, so if you're trying to message me on something else that's not Twitch, well, it ain't gonna work. I felt that given the recent results of the US Democratic primary, that it was, as a person who does some commentating on politics myself, to provide not guidance, but at least some sort of opinion or some place to center where you're at right now. Because I know that, well, most people that watch me are leftists, so I know that a lot of people are probably pretty disappointed by the apparent victory of Joe Biden. I'm not an American, but I thought that people might want to hear my opinions as a person who is somewhat more to the north. There is a possibility, I must mention this beforehand, that I know a lot of people are kind of looking at this. You're even seeing it playing out in the betting odds on Real Care Politics. If you're the kind of person like me who looks at that quite often, I think beforehand, the person that a lot of people thought was going to replace Biden was Clinton. Now it's Andrew Cuomo. I assume because some people think he's doing a good job in New York, even though he isn't. All right. I mean, as far as I know, he's been using this as an opportunity to cut Medicare and stuff like that. But let's not get into that right now, because until that happens, I don't know how relevant that is. But I do think it says something that there are quite a significant number of people who are betting. I mean, the people in the betting markets, they're betting a lot of fucking money. Like millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they seem to think that there's a somewhat decent chance that Biden is in such a not good state of being that they're gonna have to replace him come the convention, which is not really a good position for us to be in, as the supposed resistance or the opposition towards the sort of neo-fascist, proto-fascist institutions that are currently running the U.S. government in the form of Trump and his cronies. But let's go back to Biden and this whole primary process to begin with, because at least for me, I think that this primary has sort of revealed something that I think quite a lot of us did not want to admit to ourselves, which is that winning as a even moderately leftist candidate as Bernie is, thanks for following by the way, even winning as a moderately leftist candidate as Bernie is, maybe near impossible, or somewhat close to that. Not only do you have the corporate media working against you, and if you look at the polls, Democratic primary voters are far more trusting of the mainstream media and corporate media than the Republicans are. This especially applies, and I've definitely seen this in my life, to the older generation. They're very, very trusting of corporate medias, and they are by far what we call prime voters, which are basically the people who are most likely to vote, and they are quite a substantial portion of the population, and they're the people who won Biden this election. If you look at the polling, Bernie not just slightly, overwhelmingly won among people 44 and younger. Biden overwhelmingly won with people 55 and over, and I really think that says something about the state of the American political system right now. Trump's got this easy. We're getting to that. Because, I mean, to a certain extent, I sort of alluded to it before, that Biden is such a weak candidate that people whose job it is to bet money are not that the majority of them are betting on this, but quite a substantial portion are betting on the idea that there will be a replacement of Joe Biden with Andrew Cuomo, despite there not being any official hints of this. But the idea of Joe Biden sort of actually being the Democratic nominee and having to go up against Donald Trump is such a I don't want to say ludicrous, but such a harrowing prospect that well, we're seeing what we're seeing now. So yeah, this not only does Bernie have to face a lot of pushback from the media, but I think we probably would have seen this play out a bit differently had Keith Ellison had Keith Ellison become the chair of the DNC. He's not. That is Tom Perez. He sets the rules. And he was basically put in there by Obama. Because Keith Ellison was endorsed by Bernie Sanders. If I remember correctly, he was also endorsed by Chuck Schumer and many other people within the Democratic Party establishment. He was kind of set to lead it. But Obama, not a lot of people know this, seems to have a vendetta against the left, and he's very, very against any sort of leftist candidate winning, even a black leftist candidate like Keith Ellison. And I think that's because he knows that once the legacy of a leftist candidate becomes manifest, the comparisons that will inevitably be drawn between that policy set and what he did, which is basically nothing if not exacerbate the problem, that's not going to look too good for him. And he is quite very much enjoying his legacy as the golden boy of the Democratic Party right now, and he does not want that to change. Obama is very concerned about his legacy. We have to deal with people like Obama, we have to deal with people like the media, and it's becoming more and more apparent that working with within the system of the Democratic Party is somewhat of a lost cause, because I mean, like, we saw what happened, right? I mean, to refresh anyone who kind of missed that, Bernie was about to win the primary. Joe Biden was always set to win South Carolina. He did, by a good margin. And whoever was going to be the first person to win a state against Bernie Sanders, Obama decided, you know what, we got to coalesce around this person if we want to keep the Democratic establishment alive, and that's what they did. That's how Joe Biden won this primary, by basically a bunch of backroom deals wherein all of the sort of establishment fell into line against Bernie, because there's anything that the Democratic establishment does not want, it is a leftist candidate. And let me be clear as to why that is. It's because the people who are sort of like running these institutions have a vested interest in not having Bernie Sanders win, and that is because, let's say that, like, I mean, they have such a vested interest against it that they're willing to run Joe Biden, a man who, at least to me, very, very clearly has serious problems with his mental faculties. I've known people with dementia. I think a lot of us have known people with dementia, and I think that looking at Joe Biden, a lot of what we're seeing is eerily similar to what we're seeing with our grandparents or great-grandparents, whatever it might be. And it's not good. It's actually quite sad in a lot of areas. And yeah, but they're even willing to go with him because, let's say that Joe Biden loses. I mean, they want Joe Biden to win, of course, but let's say that he loses. I think, being honest, looking at the way that he's running this campaign, looking at the position that he's in now, quite frankly, and looking at the position that Trump's in, Trump being at his highest approval ratings of his presidency, and Biden, comparatively to Clinton, being at a much worse position now than she was at the same time. Considering that, it is, I think barring a big shakeup, and we are seeing a big shakeup right now with the coronavirus, so a lot of things are subject to change here. But it doesn't look too good for Joe Biden, let's put it that way. So let's say that he loses. These people are gonna still have a job. That's the reality of it. There's a lot of money and a lot of influence and a lot of time and a lot of opportunities to be made in the sort of resistance movement. I'm not saying that they want to be in that position. I think to a certain extent they care about having power, but that is not an existential threat to them. What is an existential threat is Bernie Sanders taking over the party, because we know that, well, you know, and I know, and he knows, and they definitely know that should he take over the party, they're going to lose their jobs, they're going to lose their livelihoods, and he's going to replace them all with his leftist sort of staff and whatever. He's not going to have the I don't know, the near attendants or whatever, because they're awful. They're the worst people ever, and nobody would ever want them around were not for the fact that these people 99% of the time were sort of born into a great deal of political influence. And that kind of thing that they have in some ways inherited and in some ways sort of gained over a significant portion of their lifetime would immediately, let me do that snap again, immediately be erased by a Bernie Sanders presidency. And because of that, we've seen a lot of very, very disturbing things in this primary. We've seen what looks to me, at least, to be in Iowa, some sort of cheating, or at the very least, there seems to have been a selective releasing of the vote tallies, not only in Iowa, but in the subsequent states, because, well, let's put it this way, they didn't take too long to release Joe Biden's sort of results, and that's because, well, I mean, like, I'm not sure about this, but I think it's because why we always saw when Bernie Sanders won, and not when Biden won, but always when Bernie Sanders won, these ridiculously long delays in the polling results. I think that's because, to a certain extent, that was deliberate. I'm not saying they're like stuffing the votes or anything, but it's really up to them to release the vote tallies whenever they deem it necessary. And I think that they likely were taking some creative liberties with the necessity and the timeliness of their ability to release that information, unfortunately. And I think that somewhat contributed to, well, that and many other things contributed to Bernie Sanders' loss. So those are a lot of things that Bernie Sanders had to go up against, and I'm not sure that any person, barring the most skilled and amazing politician, could be able to overcome that. Because I do think that Bernie Sanders is quite a lot more skilled a politician than, for example, George fucking Bush. Both of them, to be honest. But he needs to be quite more than that. He needs to be an excellent politician. Frankly, he is not. He's a good politician, sure, but he's not an Obama, and he's not a... Who else is a really good politician? Honestly, Trump's a pretty good politician. It's kind of fucked to say, but... I mean... He's a fucking reality show host that WWE... Dude, it's fucking Donald Trump! He's a fucking president! I still can't get over that. It's so fucking weird. Anyways. America's so fucking weird. How can you like Donald Trump? Anyways, I think we need to start questioning the viability of this whole running through the Democratic Party system thing. However, I will say that I've been historically, and I still am to a large extent, quite against that, because I'm not convinced that within the American context that forming a third party, especially within the 21st century, is a viable option. just because of the way that the political system is set up. I mean, it's not parliamentary. If it was parliamentary, then I would say we should have been doing this for a long time before that, but it's not. And going outside of that two-party system is possibly even more difficult, because then you have sort of both of these gigantic political apparatuses working against you instead of just one. I don't know if that's overcomable either. And that's why I think later today we're going to be talking about direct action and kind of going outside of the normal electoral politics way of doing things. But I will try to encourage everyone to stick with electoral politics. I think that is still very important, and it affects a lot of people's lives. Go to the ballot box. No matter what I say, go to the ballot box this election. Vote for your local sort of guys in your local elections. There are going to be a lot of referendums on things. You're going to want to vote on that too. That's very important. But with regards to the presidential primary, I think a lot of you are probably wondering what my opinion is on actually voting for Joe Biden. And the way things are looking right now, considering everything that has happened, and what Joe Biden's sort of position has been on sort of attracting the sort of Bernie Sanders route, which is even more aggressively hostile than Hillary Clinton's, I must say that I am, at this point, not for voting Joe Biden. In fact, I would say actively I would encourage you not to vote for him and to vote for somebody else. I would say do not vote for Trump. Trump's a bad guy, and his presidency would undoubtedly be worse than Biden's. Now, I have no illusions about this. I know that either Biden or Trump is going to win, barring a miracle. But this does not mean that there's no value either in not voting or in voting for an alternative candidate, because I think there is, and we're about to get into that. So let's kind of first address some centrist talking points with regards to voting for Biden, because I've seen some of this recently. I've gotten into some Twitter arguments over this. For example, one of the arguments is, well, what about the courts? What about the courts? Not a lot of people know this. Well, the old guard's gonna know it. People are above the age of 40, 50, but a lot of people my age don't know this. Unless they've been they're kind of well read on the political history like I am. But Joe Biden was actually, I don't know if he was the head of the Senate Oversight, but he was, I don't know what his official title was, but he was essentially in charge of, or had a massive role in getting Clarence Thomas into, not only getting Clarence Thomas into the Supreme Court, but in fact stifling the testimony of Anita Hill with regards to her allegations against Clarence Thomas. Furthermore, we know that, for example, Obama thought that Merrick Garland, a person who I think, quite frankly, is a center-right judge, was a good idea for the Supreme Court. And I also know that Biden is significantly more conservative than Obama was. So, forgive me if I have very little confidence that there will be a significant difference in the courts under a Biden presidency. So I just don't buy that. I don't. Let's look at another argument. Kids in cages. Isn't this your fucking white supremacy or fucking white privilege or something? I mean, well, not me. Well, to a certain extent me, but people like me, I should say. Many of my friends who are also sort of a similar opinion to me are not white. In fact, if you look at the polls, the majority of the people who have this sort of break the system mentality towards the Democratic primary are actually overwhelmingly people of color. So I would argue, in fact, that it is the opposite, that to accept the system as it currently exists and to perpetuate it implicitly by participating in it is in itself an expression of white privilege. Because it shows that, well, not that it shows, but it is at least some sort of indication that under Biden presidency, things are not going to be that bad for you. Things might be bad for you under Trump presidency, but they're not going to be that bad for you under Biden presidency. The reality is that under both administrations, there will be a lot of violence, quite a significant amount of violence against people of color. We know, for example, that Biden supported Obama's immigration policies. Obama, previously known as the deporter in chief, because I think he, if I remember correctly, had an unprecedented number of deportations throughout his presidency. His immigration policy was quite harsh. In fact, he, and I know a lot of people will kind of push back against me on this, but he was actually, well, not he, but the Obama administration was actually the one who put those kids in the cages. I don't have the picture right now, but there was a picture that was initially purported to be from the Trump administration. Don't get me wrong, the Trump administration definitely is putting kids into cages, but this particular picture actually happened to be taken under the Obama administration. Yeah. So we know that this is not something that was unique to the Trump administration. It's just something that was, one, a lot worse hidden, and two, I think ramped up quite a lot under Trump. And make no mistake, I think that a lot of the bad aspects of Biden will be exacerbated and sort of be like twofold under Trump. But we have to get, therefore, into why, considering if Biden is, as one might say, the lesser of two evils, why one would not vote for him. In the American political system, as far as I know, there's not something that in other political systems might be referred to as a vote of no confidence, which is basically a fuck you vote. Basically, we don't like you, go fuck yourself vote. It's usually done against the party leader. For example, this would be in the case Joe Biden. When the constituents think he is, they don't like him. This doesn't particularly exist in the American political system. So the closest thing I think that really exists is abstaining from voting altogether. I think that the more losses because one of Bernie's sort of biggest weak points on the campaign trail was this whole electability argument. But I think that the more of these centrist candidates end up losing to Donald Trump or not to Donald Trump, but to the right wing in general, is the more ridiculous this electability argument is going to seem. And I think that there was actually an improvement on the electability argument. I mean, in 2016, the electability argument was a lot stronger, I think, and had a lot more sway. In this case, while it did have a lot of sway, initially at least, Bernie was actually leading on the electability argument. But unfortunately, when the media did their whole thing after South Carolina, Bernie was not able to sort of maneuver fast enough to turn the narrative back in his tide on electability. People aren't that dumb. They can see patterns and they can see when they're being fooled. And if centrist candidates keep losing over and over, eventually there has to be some kind of change. And I know this because this is what happened in the early 90s. I mean, the rise of Bill Clinton was a very, very complicated sort of process, political process. But to a large extent, it was spurred on by the idea that the Democrats were constantly losing. And that shift to the right that Bill Clinton brought with the New Democrats is something that I think a lot of people wanted because they wanted to finally win as the Democratic Party. While that dynamic may have been the case back then, coming off of the fall of the Berlin Wall, the death of the hippie movement, things like that, nowadays, with increase in economic devastation, a widening gap between the rich and the poor, this new coronavirus outbreak, and new economic collapse caused by the same problems as the 2008 financial collapse, with climate change accelerating not only diseases like the coronavirus, but various ecological disasters around the world that will eventually cause things like refugee crises and whatnot. I think the opinions of people are a lot different now than they were back then. I mean, back then, the narrative was, it was a lot easier to have that sort of Thomas Friedman or that Fukuyama end of the world narrative because things were looking pretty good for neoliberal capitalism at that point. Not anymore. Not anymore. It's looking bad now. Another argument that's commonly used is, well, what about climate change? There was a Paris Climate Accords, sure, which would have done almost nothing. Sure. But besides that, and even besides that, because, well, I don't even need to say besides that, because frankly, Biden has not put out any sort of comprehensive climate policy that I think will make even the slightest difference in the global fight against climate change. Because here's the reality. Tiny, tiny steps like the ones that Biden are proposing, they're not going to work. In fact, they're going to have almost no impact. Most of the emissions are put out by only a few companies. So these sort of small neoliberal adjustments to the economy, they're not going to work. We need drastic action to address climate change, and the sort of things that Biden wants to do are going to be ineffectual at best. At best. If anything, they'll be harmful at worst, because then people feel like they've done something when they haven't, and then at least people know now that things are getting worse. I think Sam Cedar made a point somewhat recently that, oh, well, the Democratic Party isn't going to learn a lesson. The Democratic Party doesn't learn lessons. Organizations like that don't. Because, as I brought up before, they have a vested interest in not learning that lesson, to be fair. The problem is that I don't give a fuck about the Democratic Party in terms of what kind of lessons they're going to learn. I care about convincing the American people. And while the Democratic Party may not learn a lesson because they have a vested interest in not learning that lesson, the American people do not have such vested interest. I believe that they are quite capable of learning that lesson. And perhaps we need to make them learn it. And we kind of go back to 2016. Because in 2016, I said vote Hillary. Because at the time, it seemed possible that changes to the Democratic Party could be made such that a leftist candidate could in the future become a viable option. Even Bernie Sanders. And we now see that is not the case. I also said that because, well, frankly, Hillary Clinton was just not as bad as Joe Biden. We'll get to that a bit later. But I think we're dealing with a sort of different situation with Joe Biden. And it's a sort of Al Gore to John Kerry situation. Neither of them are good, but John Kerry was quite a lot worse. The a similar situation with Joe Biden, except that Joe Biden is fucking dying. So I want to have us take a look at, because I didn't initially sort of buy into this idea, because I think a lot of people who are on the sort of burn your bus camp were, to be honest, kind of just doing it not for any strategic reason with regards to the Democratic Party or voting patterns or anything like that, but were just mad that Bernie lost. And I frankly do not think that that's a smart reason for not voting. I don't. But so I initially thought, you know, I'm gonna have to vote for Joe Biden. Michael Bloomberg was actually, I think I said this publicly, the only person I thought, like, I can't endorse this guy over Donald Trump. But then I watched this clip. This is back in the day by Lawrence O'Donnell. He's an MSNBC contributor, and I have almost no doubt that he's quite embarrassed by this clip kind of coming back to the surface now, because I'm sure that being an MSNBC contributor, he would not say the same thing now as he did then. But let's just say that I think in this instance, he was clearly being a lot more honest. He was a lot less constrained by the institutions that he was a part of and works for now. I think that this is not only an apt sort of analysis, but it is an analysis so strikingly acute, and it just gets so to the point of what I'm talking about here that I mean, like, honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself, but it really immediately flipped my opinion on the idea of voting for Joe Biden. So honestly, take a look at it. Oh, right, so here it is. Okay.
If you want to pull the party, the major party that is closest to the way you're thinking, to what you're thinking, you must show them that you're capable of not voting for them. If you don't show them you're capable of not voting for them, they don't have to listen to you. I promise you that. I worked within the Democratic Party. I didn't listen or have to listen to anything on the left while I was working in the Democratic Party, because the left had nowhere to go. If you want to pull the party...
I mean, that's the reality. That's the fucking reality of it. That's the fucking reality. They have to do shit. We can say, oh, we want this, we want that. But if, at the end of the day, we say, oh, we have this and this demands, and then we say, oh, at the end of the day, we're still going to vote for whoever's Democratic primary nominee, then what the fuck kind of position are we in? Because at that point, if I'm sort of a Democratic establishment goon, I look at the situation and I say, I have to do shit for you then. I think that's what Joe Biden's analysis is. Because Joe Biden, we'll see this, has been going around saying he's gonna veto Medicare for all. And I kind of pointed this out on Twitter. He didn't even have it in him to lie. This is despite the fact that Joe Biden lied about fucking meeting Mandela. Let's look at this. This is reported ironically by the Washington Post.
Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador at the streets of Soweto to get to see him on Robbins Island.
What the fuck?
I came back from South Africa trying to see Nelson Mandela and getting arrested for trying to see him on Robbins Island. He was in prison.
Okay, we don't need to watch the rest of this because he didn't fucking meet him like that. Okay. He didn't get arrested trying to meet Mandela. So he will lie about that. But he didn't even have it in him. He couldn't even fucking lie about Medicare for all. Why? 2 reasons. One, the idea of him supporting Medicare for all was so fucking ridiculous that he probably said, you know what, I'm not even going to try to convince anyone on this. Secondly, his analysis was probably similar to what Norman O'Donnell was sort of putting forward there, which is, he doesn't have to do shit for us. Because we're going to, like, we have people telling us, shaming us morally, telling us that we have to vote for him. So why would he ever do anything for us if he knows that we're going to vote for him anyway? Okay, the only way he's going to do anything for us is if he's fucking scared of us. Is if he says, oh, well, I have to do something because otherwise the lefties are not going to vote for me. You know? That's the reality of it. Because we're so scared of Donald Trump that if we're so scared of Donald Trump that we're going to vote for him no matter what, then we're going to always get people like Joe Biden, because a real leftist candidate can't make it through the Democratic Party, and Joe Biden has no reason, just like Hillary Clinton didn't have a reason. That's why she picked Tim Kaine as her vice president and made no concessions to the left, quite frankly. This is why. There's no reason to. Why? It's strategically it's a ridiculous move to give concessions to people who are not even fighting you, because that's what we're doing. If we saying we'll vote for you no matter what, we're not fighting him. We're his allies at that point. And if we're his allies, he doesn't have to do shit for us. He's taking us for a ride. You understand? So this idea of voting blue no matter who and assuring the vote to the centrist candidate no matter what just ensures that they do not have to do anything to appease us. Let's look at the Tea Party, for example. Back in the day, I don't know how relevant they are now, but back in the day, there was a wing of the Republican Party called the Tea Party, formed what's called the Freedom Caucus. There were a bunch of sort of like libertarian types, sort of ultra-right on various issues. And they had a lot of sway within the party. Why? Because they fought against the Republican establishment. They were against the Republican establishment. And they certainly weren't saying, oh, we'll vote for the Republican candidate no matter what. That's the reality. So at the end of the day, that spurred on a sort of like shift that I think eventually culminated with Trump and the Republican establishment, where they had to say, okay, if you don't do this, this, and this, most notably, sort of Limbaugh influenced things like immigration reform, but also in some cases things like trade reform. If we don't do these things, these guys are not going to vote for us, and we're going to lose. So we need to make some concessions to them. If we're going to have any power, this is how we wield it. This is how we wield it. By weaponizing our vote. By saying, we will not vote for you unless you give us something. Jesus Christ. He would veto! Maybe I need to explain this to people. You know what that means? It means that it's already gone through the House and the Senate. It's on his desk. Which means that all he has to do is sign it. So it is totally, like, whether or not he signs it is completely up to his sort of like ideological opposition or lack thereof to Medicare for all. And what he's saying here is that he is so ideologically opposed to Medicare for all that even if he had the opportunity to implement it without having to exert any effort whatsoever, he would still veto it. That's how ideologically opposed to the idea is. And if he is that ideologically opposed to that idea, then he's ideologically opposed to everything that we hold dear, quite frankly. And I don't see why we should treat a person like that as an ally. I don't. So, yeah. Bye, Biden. Because, I certainly am not going to be fucking endorsing you or saying good words about you or telling people to vote for you on my stream. I ain't going to do it. Because, frankly, you're my enemy. You and me, you and every person on the left are at deep ideological odds. And we need to start treating this like this is an actual war and not a fucking play fight. And not like a battle for show. If we're saying we vote for you no matter what, we've relinquished all of our power then. It's gone. Especially right now, during the coronavirus outbreak, this is the time for war. Because here's the reality. If Biden gets, and this is where I'll leave you guys on, I think a lot of people are sort of looking very, very short term at the whole Biden versus Trump situation. I think this is one of the most important points, in that they're comparing the policy platforms right now of Biden and Trump, and they say, oh, well, Biden's better, so let's vote for him. But what about after then? Because how did we get Trump in the first place? We got it from the neoliberalism of Obama, the constant pushing for trade deals, the outsourcing. We got it from the rampant corruption, then political system. Trump arose from a dissatisfaction with all that Obama and his legacy and neoliberal sort of reforms. All of that, that's how Trump got into power. So, while you may look short term at the idea of Biden versus Trump and say Biden might be better, what about whoever runs after Biden versus Trump 5.0, who is dead fucking fascist and is about to take over the country? What then? Because if you think that after Trump everything is going to go back to normal and we're going to have like fucking we running against George Bush or whatever the fuck, you're dead mistaken. I feel very sorry for you, and sorry for your intellectual state of mind if that's how you think this is going to play out, because that's not how it's going to play out. If Biden gets the nomination and institutes the same policies that got us Trump to begin with, we will see a monster unlike anything we've seen before.